Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I actually wanted to tackle a subject I've seen come up across the boards more than a few times over the last few months, in which I actually recently had a really interesting discussion about, and that is complexity creep, and at which point are champions being overloaded. Now I know that's a very common complaint. A lot of people are really talking about, wow, these champions are just, new champions have just everything you would want in a champion, there's no possible weakness to them, and wow, what is the point of even playing older champions, that sort of thing. And I'm not sure exactly what some people mean by overloading a champion's kit. Now, because first of all, any champion's kit can sound overloaded, especially when all you're really doing is reciting what the abilities do. To take an older example, Jarvan IV gets free damage on his passive, his E grants attack speed for no reason. Why does his Q have an armor shred? When you start phrasing Jarvan like that, he sounds overloaded. Why does he have all this extra aspects to his kit? That sort of a thing is really what I'm getting at when people start talking about overloaded kits. And it sort of stems from a place of, I don't think there are a lot of people evaluating why a champion has a specific portion of their kit / what does it do for them, because generally there are weaknesses to parts of their kit, or they actually need certain aspects. I know a good example from back in the day is a lot of people were making a complaint about Darius's E and basically asking, why is this giving him free armor shred? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And the frank answer from Riot's design staff at the time was he actually needed it. Without it, he was not able to function as intended. He really was not able to get the executes, wasn't just doing enough damage. So he actually did sort of require that additional damage. So that was a really interesting part to me. And so it's a lot of questions of, does the champion have it for a reason? The answer is probably yes. Sometimes it can be harder to figure out why it's there, but generally I would assume that there is a reason for the champion to have the aspects on their kit that they do. So generally speaking, let's talk about why champions are becoming more complex, and also, what is complexity creep really a problem? Because I think that's the biggest crux of the argument, is people are asking, why do new champions need so many different things? Now, first and foremost, the important thing to remember is that League has a finite design space. There are literally only so many unique champions you can make given the constraints of League of Legends. Because there are, even at over 140 champions in the game, there are only so many times you can riff on similar abilities before people just start asking, why is this even a thing? And you kind of actually already see it with stuff like Aatrox's Q, for example. A lot of people were saying, wow, this champion is basically just Riven just because he has a 3-part Q. And now imagine you start looking at other abilities like single target skill shots. You know, there are only so many times you can have things like Morgana Q or Ezreal Q or Vel'Koz Q before, if you give it to another champion, it starts feeling exactly the same as one of the other champions in the game. So a lot of times champions have to feel different, and because Riot have already tapped a lot of the easy design space and a lot of the simple design space, there just isn't that much left for simple champions. We're never likely to get another champion as simple and easy to play as someone like Garen or Annie, for the simple fact that if you tried to do it, they would probably just feel like Garen and Annie and not feel like an individual or unique champion. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that League has actually had historically, is that a lot of champions that have been released didn't have any difference to them, didn't have unique reasons to be played. They may as well you may as well just play whichever one has the best numbers, and irregardless of their kit, because they all do mostly the same thing. That was a big reason for the tank rework a couple years ago, and that Riot wanted to make sure that these tanks had different reasons to be picked beyond, well, they do a bunch of arbitrary area of effect damage once they've initiated. They all have initiation, they all have some kind of sustain, we're just going to throw them in the middle of the fight. There's no reason to pick a Mumu over Zac, let's say, because they both do exactly the same thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why champion kits have been more complex, is because there just aren't a lot of simple kits to go around. And to kind of segue into my next point, they have to have distinct reasons to be picked. If Riot were to release a new diver, for example Sylas, the biggest question for everybody is, why play Sylas over Camille or Jarvan or Xin Zhao or Hecarim or Vi or literally any of the other divers that exist in the game? Well, the answer for Sylas at the very least is that, first of all, he does magic damage, which already gives him a unique niche over someone like Camille or Jarvan, because they're all going to do physical damage. So if you really need magic damage on your team composition, well, it might be worth it to actually pick Sylas over them just because you can get magic damage out of him. The The other reason is he has a distinct niche. He can steal enemy ultimates and use them against them. So that gives Sylas sort of a really interesting and really hard to figure out place to use him. Sylas is a little bit harder, so maybe not the best example, but Sylas at least has that going for him. So if you know the enemy team has powerful ultimates you want to take, if you know you need magic damage on the team composition, if you know you need I believe he's mostly getting played in the top lane and jungle, then that's a reason to play Sylas versus some of these other divers, for example. It's also the reason behind a lot of the oddball changes we've been getting since last year. Amumu, for example, gaining the magic resistance shred on his passive. Mundo gaining stacking MR on his E. Like, these changes are being made because Riot are trying to give tactical and strategic reasons for these champions to be played, other than just they're the best in-class tank. Amumu now combos really well with magic damage team compositions because he shreds enemy magic resistance. So your team, which might consist of, let's say, Syndra or Corki or Rumble, for example, are going to do way more damage because you have Amumu initiating for them and shredding their magic resistance. Dr. Mundo had his identity sharpened a little bit. Now he's sort of the anti-magic damage juggernaut. If you know you want a fighter in the top lane who's going to be good into magic damage, well, Mundo is a good option for this because of the stacking MR on his E. He has the ability to build Spirit Visage early. It's a great item on Dr. Mundo, and it really helps him out against magic damage champions, so that's sort of a reason to pick him now beyond just he's the best bruiser. I think is the biggest reason why you see these kinds of changes being made, because they're trying to give champions a distinct niche. And so a lot of times that's why champions have become more complex. If you really think about champions like Neeko, for example, why would you pick Neeko over literally any other burst mage? What does she bring to the table that other burst mages do not? And part of that answer is she can disguise herself as another champion. It's a bit of complexity added to the champion's kit, but it gives her a reason to be chosen versus someone else. Camille, I know a lot of people kind of compare Camille to Jarvan the Fourth, and especially to Vi, and kind of say, why would I play these champions over Camille when Camille does everything I want? Well, they do actually have strengths over Camille. Vi's Blast Shield passive gives her generic resistances. That health shield blocks against all types of damage. If Camille, meanwhile, jumps in and auto attacks an AD carry, let's say, but the rest of the team is magic damage, that shield's not going to do her any good. There's no value she can get out of it. Vi's mobility is free targeted. She doesn't need a wall in order to use Vault Breaker. She can just charge it up and start punching people. Camille has to have terrain nearby in order to get her mobility spell off. So, and it's telegraphed because there's two parts to it. So it's a lot harder for Camille to surprise initiate on someone, unlike someone like, say, Jarvan the Fourth, who can just kind of hit, flag and drag, and go. So there are reasons to be playing other divers versus Camille. Now, potentially these changes, these reasons to pick other champions aren't well defined enough. Maybe it's the case of, yeah, Vi has a couple advantages over Camille, but generally speaking, Camille is going to be significantly stronger. Or maybe it's a question of, yeah, okay, I might have a reason why I want to play them, but they just don't do enough damage or don't bring enough to the table that Camille does. At which point, that's sort of a tuning thing. I don't think that's necessarily an issue of design. I think that might just be a case of Camille does so much more damage than Vi that there's no reason to choose Vi. That sort of a thing, I think, is the biggest reason. But those are all tuning issues, and I do have faith that Riot can eventually figure those out. So that's just kind of my thoughts. I think that you are going to end up with more complex champions just as a matter of course in League of Legends. I don't think there's any possible way we're going to have a place where champions like Garen are really getting created again. I just don't think it's going to be a thing, unfortunately. And there are kind of reasons for why the things exist the way they do. So those are just kind of my thoughts on champion complexity and why we have champions with so many different kind of passives and things. And so, if you just give it some thought, I would say, think about why champions get the passives and the abilities that they do. And I think generally speaking, you'll find most of the time that they have a reason for those abilities to exist. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Go ahead and let me know as well what you think of any of this down in the comment section below. Would love to hear your thoughts, especially if you disagree. Would love to hear why you guys think that champion complexity is a problem or what Riot can maybe do about it. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts. And finally, if you want to see more Grab the Lantern content from me, you can check out my blog, which is linked down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your guys' enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I will talk to you all later.